And let's say a very good morning to Esther Krakue. She was on our show just a little while ago, and she spoke so much common sense that she was picked up all over the place. The Daily Mail had her writing an article for it. She's been on TV. Esther, a very good morning. Welcome back. Hello, Esther. Are you there?
Hiya.
Hi, how you doing? Nice to see you. I'm glad to have you on a brand new video scenario going on as well on YouTube. If you're not watching it now, you should be watching it. Let's talk, Esther, about where we are and where we've got to this week. We've seen the latest kind of horror show with the actress from Killing Eve, who's been now sort of absolutely desecrated because she's had the temerity to go out with a bloke who apparently might be a registered Republican. I mean, can this get any more ridiculous?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, isn't the point of dating who you want? The color of their skin doesn't matter, or I guess their politics doesn't matter. You just date who you want. I really, cancel culture has just lost its mind. It really has. It's like you're supposed to see everyone as equal, but not everyone is technically equal if you date the wrong person.
No, I mean, do you think, though, that we can get to a point perhaps where we've kind of moved, it's gone so ridiculous that sensible people will see it for now what it is and they'll start drifting away from it? Or are we destined to kind of be stuck with it for years and decades?
Oh, I think if someone like J.K. Rowling is on board with the ridiculousness of cancel culture, that shows that there's a lot of hope.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. Because the other big story of the week, of course, is one that I'd like your view on as well. And it's the whole Bianca Williams, Cressida Dick, Metropolitan Police thing, right? Where basically the head of the Metropolitan Police has said, first of all, that the police in the stopping of the car and the searching of the people in the car did not do anything wrong, but she's sorry nevertheless.
Yeah, I think this is like another version of bend the knee. I cannot believe that now we're at so is it you cannot stop anyone without it being racist, sexist, homophobic? Then what's the point of the police? I mean, why are you apologizing if you did nothing wrong?
Right.
This is the culture that we're living in, and I think it's just getting more and more ridiculous. And it's very disheartening when it's coming from the police force. Like, we pay you to protect us. We don't pay you to sort of, act like a barking seal.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the ridiculous nature of where we are. And there is this kind of obsession as well, don't you think, with saying sorry. We saw it in Prime Minister's Questions where Sir Keir Starmer was desperately trying to make Boris Johnson look foolish because he knew by asking him to say sorry that Boris wouldn't do it. And he just kept asking him, well, why won't you apologise? And I'm watching it and I'm thinking to myself, well, what difference will it make if he says sorry? That won't change anything.
Yeah, why wouldn't you apologize? Simply because I don't want to. No. We're allowed to do what we want. That's the nature of living in a free society. I don't think that apologizing is trying to make amends. I think it's bending the knee to people that want to make you look foolish.
Yeah, exactly right. And how are you finding your sort of newfound fame, if you like? Because you're now even more famous than you were the last time I spoke to you. So are you getting kind of things thrown at you in the street? Are you getting even more abuse on social media?
I mean, the abuse doesn't stop. There are people that follow me with just the intent to abuse me, which is quite amusing, I suppose. I haven't been recognized in the street, thank goodness. I don't want to be recognized.
Well, I mean, that's when it starts to get really tricky. And I mean, there is a serious side to it, though, because we talked to Neil Oliver this week about the way that, civil wars begin. And if you do actually take a step back from some of this conversation that's going on all the time, people's feelings are so kind of wounded. People's vitriol is so outraged that it doesn't take much for what people say to turn into somebody punching you.
Yeah, that's the thing. Politics has become so personal. We've kind of moved away from, actually, I disagree with you, you disagree with me, we're still human beings, to you disagree with me, therefore you're a vile individual. And I cannot believe that's where we're at with our politics. It's very disheartening, and it also makes me a little bit scared myself, just because you don't know what kind of uni you're following. It's like, oh, that Esther, she's a traitor, whatever, and then decide to do something crazy.
Right. And what do you make of where we are now with Black Lives Matter? Because the noise around the movement seems to have died down a little bit. Nobody's really mentioning them in every single breath. The marches, I think, are still. I don't even know, to be honest, if there's one planned for this week. But the marches will probably continue for a bit. But it feels as though the phenomenon of the people who wanted to pull down the statues and all of that seems to have kind of died down a little bit.
Yeah, and that's more of a testament to the fact that it was complete boredom and idleness from the beginning. It wasn't something that they actually took seriously.
Yeah.
The fact that it died down so quickly, and the Black Lives Matter organization is running away comfortably with over £1 million in funding,
Yeah.
just shows the absurdity of the whole movement.
Yes, it's been a great success for the people at the top of it. But I think once they started to come out and admit that they were basically, international socialists, that they were members of the Socialist Worker Party, that they wanted to defund the police and they wanted to basically tear down all capitalism, I think people started to go, really? Oh, I didn't know that. I thought they were just these really nice Guardian reading people who wanted to make the world a better place, And it now seems as though, and I predicted this, that the sort of millennial generation have got a very short attention span. And they played games for about 2-3 weeks, and now they've gone back to their lattes on Clapham Common.
Yeah, it was just a very long, annoying episode of So You Think You Can Woke. That whole, most of June has just been a very long, drawn out. So You Think You Can Woke.
Yes, exactly right. Well, let's hope July is a bit more interesting. But I see from, again, the front page of The Guardian, they've got an exclusive saying that basically the police across England and Wales are going to now face an inquiry from the Independent Office for Police Conduct to see whether or not they racially discriminate against ethnic minorities. I mean, what's your view of that?
I think this is a conversation that we have all the bloody time. We always have this conversation. We always have inquiries into whether public organizations are behaving in a racially discriminatory way. And I'm like, well, evidence time and time again doesn't really support that. And moreover, what is the purpose of this? Are you trying to distract from the real issues? Because, we have noticed that because of this kind of political correctness that surrounds a police force and just a lot of social services in this country in general, you had something like grooming gangs that went on for years in this country, and nobody wanted to speak out on it. Young white women were being abused in a horrific manner because people were so scared of speaking up that they'd be accused of being racist, right? I don't think this is a conversation we should be having. I don't think the police should be sort of scared out of doing their job because someone might call them racist.
Right.
Believe it or not, being racist is not the worst thing that can happen to you.
Yes, exactly right. And I mean, interestingly enough, lots of companies now are having these conversations around this term unconscious bias. And I keep finding it ridiculously amusing. And I'm wondering if I'm the only person. Because if you say to me, do you actually suffer from unconscious bias? Well, I don't know, do I? Because if it's unconscious, I clearly don't know that it's going on.
Exactly. And it's like everyone has unconscious bias. I'm sorry, I have an unconscious bias to a blue-haired, tattered up feminist that's like, telling me that I'm oppressed by the patriarchy. That's an unconscious bias.
Yeah.
I may not have had a conversation with her, but I look at her and I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah. No, it's very true. You're absolutely right. I feel the same way. I don't know if you remember that there was a march. I can't remember if it was Extinction Rebellion or what it was, but that woman who had very red hair and was berating some guy. It turned out that she worked for the NHS and she ended up losing her job because she was the anti-Trump woman, and I just took one look at her and I probably had what I would regard as conscious bias, thinking to myself, I never want to meet anybody like that, and I certainly never want to be in the same room as them.
Yeah, definitely. I think, but the thing is, this is what people don't realize. The whole thing is a farce, right? Companies looking into unconscious bias. It's a lot easier to do these platitudes to appease these weirdos than to actually make real change, right? It's a lot more difficult for companies to look at their not hiring policies, their salary. I don't know, their policies around salaries and raises and actually putting their money where their mouth is, than commissioning some small pathetic study over unconscious bias in the workplace, which really has no effect on them or their profitability or anything like that. Right.
I mean, I was reading Jane Moore's column in The Sun the other day, and she was saying, she was commenting on something Idris Elba had said, because Idris Elba, a very successful man, a very successful black man, had said something like, well, obviously everybody now knows that if you're to be a successful black man, you have to work twice as hard as your white counterpart to get where you want to be. And she said, well, join the club, mate. Women have been doing that for decades.
Yeah. So you think you can work? I'm oppressed. No, I'm more oppressed. I'm oppressed. No, I'm more oppressed.
Yeah. I mean, it's like an episode of The Young Ones, which you're probably too young to remember, where there was this guy who pretended to be a kind of a communist, and he was always walking around telling people, stop oppressing me. You're oppressing me. Leave me alone, when nobody was actually doing anything. But, I mean, when you look at the BBC, you know that the BBC, for example, is now giving out lectures, courses, all sorts of management schemes to make sure that everybody is the same, to make sure that nobody has any opinions that they shouldn't have. The latest this morning on the front page of the Times is that the BBC Director General is encouraging all staff to start including their pronouns in their email signatures. So I'm now, Esther, going to ask you, can you tell me what your pronoun is? Because I see this on Twitter, and apparently if you say he, him, or he stroke him, that means that you identify as a bloke. And if you are she stroke her, then you identify as a woman. I'm not sure what you do if you're somewhere in between.
I personally go by Her Royal Fineness. And I think anyone that doesn't agree with that is a complete bigot.
That's great.
And I have to admit my unconscious bias, because when I do see someone's pronouns in their Twitter bio, I do have an unconscious bias to just run away.
Yes, I just suddenly start coming out in a rash. You know, it really is quite remarkable. So what's your plan? Have you been back out and about now that we've opened restaurants and bars? Are you enjoying yourself out there?
Yes, I am. I'm going back to my studio, which I'm really looking forward to the studio, my local studio, to start training again.
Okay.
And I've just been having lunch with friends and just breathing, finally living again.
I know. I was out for dinner with Martha, my producer, last night, and some friends, and it was fantastic just to be out in the dark doing something.
Yeah.
But listen, we'll have to. Well, listen, we're almost, I think, at the point of getting people into this building again. So we're going to have to get you on, into the studio here very soon. So hopefully we'll do that.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Great stuff, Esther. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Esther Krakue, part of the Independent Republic's panel of common sense. Of course, a woman who knows when to call something exactly what it is, rather than making up a word which doesn't offend anyone. She's absolutely brilliant.